My paper is called Footed Bowl or Only a Bowl, the investigation of a 17th-century Limoges painted enamel object, and this work was carried out in the scope of a thesis project in 2009 at the State Academy of Art and Design in Stuttgart, Germany, in cooperation with the Museum for Applied Arts in Cologne. It focuses on the authentication of an enameled footed bowl attributed to a 17th-century Limoges workshop. As you probably all know, the Limoges painted enamels dating from the 16th and 17th century were highly appreciated and in much demand by dealers and collectors in the 19th century. To meet this demand, it was common to not only restore and reassemble these objects, but to construct entire pastiches of original or newly fabricated painted enamel pieces. In this regard, intensive research on the authentication of painted enamels were carried out internationally in recent years. A multidisciplinary investigation on the footed bowl presented here led to a reassessment of the object. In the following presentation, I will give a very brief introduction to the piece and then concentrate on previous restoration treatments, which appear essential for the basic understanding of the object. After this, a close view on the authenticity question will follow. The Limoges enameled footed bowl was acquired by the Museum for Applied Arts in Cologne in 1963. Prior to this time, it belonged, is it okay? Sorry. It belonged to the Lücker private collection in Cologne. No additional information about the object's provenance, history, or date of entry into the Lücker collection is known. The object consists of three elements: the bowl, the foot, and a circular plate inserted into the foot. I'm sorry. Which you can see here on this drawing. In the center, all three pieces are covered with translucent dark mulberry enamel. In the center of the bowl, there is a polychrome coat of arms with a crown and two crossing palm leaves, surrounded by allegorical scenes painted in grisaille technique. The foot bears gold decoration with a monogram RC, enclosed by a crown and two crossing palm leaves, similar to the coat of arms on the bowl. So this is very similar to this coat of arms. Based on signatures, the entire object has been attributed to the workshop of Jean or Jacques Lodin and dated to the middle of the 17th century. During former restoration treatment, which most likely dates back to the 19th or early 20th century, a coating was applied over almost the entire object. It had lost adhesion and was severely cracked with active flaking. The spreading of this coating is well demonstrated by the UV photographs shown here, and you can also see the flaking there or here. And here I also have these two images in visible light which show the coatings flaking and condition very clearly. While the coating was clear and uncolored in some areas, as illustrated by the white arrows over here, it was toned with blackish pigment in other areas, indicated by this black arrow, and here is pigmented coating. As part of a recent conservation treatment at the Museum for Applied Arts in 2008, the coating was removed mechanically from all enamel surfaces. This finally allowed differentiating clearly between enamel and areas of in-painted fills, which was barely distinguishable before. So here are UV photographs, but actually as black and white images of before and after, demonstrating that a lot of enamel surface was covered by the coating, particularly in the center of the bowl. So this is before and this is after. So an all fluorescence that you can still see now on this right photograph relates to fills that were in-painted and coated. So in these areas, the enamel is completely lost. And this image is a detail of the center, contrasting the remaining original enamel to restoration areas of in-painted and coated fills. They are red outlined and less saturated, and so all this again are in painted fills, and you will see similar mappings in following photographs. As part of the recent restoration treatment, it was decided to remove fills partially from less visible areas, such as the bottom of the bowl and the foot. This procedure revealed a solder joint between bowl and foot, you can see here, that relates to the old restoration and will be discussed in more detail at a later point of this talk. The partial removal of coating and fills allowed a detailed analysis of the methods and the materials used for the prior restoration. For restoring the losses in enamel, a distinct build-up was observed, including an initial gray-colored primer layer that had been applied to the copper base. It's here, and this is a close-up view of the primer layer, followed by opaque white fills, the in-painting, very thin layer, and finally the overall coating. The coating was identified as bleached shellac with addition of a drying oil. Calcium sulfate and calcium carbonate materials were used for the fills in combination with an organic binder. And the compounds of the initial gray-colored primer layer were identified as lead white and carbon black. The primer layer's binding medium appeared to be similar to the overall coating, indicating a resinous binder as the main component. It is interesting to note that lead white-based primers were typically used in European paintings on copper supports, since they inhibit the formation of copper corrosion and adhere well to the subsequent paint layers. Interestingly, my recent investigation of a Limoges painted enamel from the Herzog Anton Ulrich Museum in Brunswick, Germany, revealed a further example of lead white primer used for restoration. So these are residues of the lead white primer, and it also has a similar color as the one on the Cologne piece. And it is known that this restoration in Brunswick was carried out by a German painter called Karl Baudet in 1884. So further research on this topic might bring out whether the use of lead white primer is a specific technique of this restorer or whether it can be found more frequently on painted enamels. So now let's turn to the authenticity topic. The recent restoration treatment of removing coating and in-painted fills also uncovered several details questioning the object's authenticity. For example, you can see that the dark translucent enamels of the foot and bowl differ from each other in color, gloss, and condition. The shape and design of the foot itself appears uncommon, and the most evident being the solder joint between the bowl and the foot. While Limoges painted enamels were typically assembled mechanically with rivets or other means, the use of solder is common for 19th century restorations, just like the assembly of pieces that did not belong together originally. Therefore, the authenticity of the assembly was doubtful and led to the multidisciplinary investigation. And for this, let's first look at the bowl. The underside of the bowl bears a gold signature of the artist, which is here. And additionally, a small monogram is located on the right side, painted with metal oxides, which you can see here. The grisaille scenes partly derive from prints after Etienne de Laune, which were a common source for Limoges painted enamels. A painted enamel candlestick with a very similar grisaille work attributed to Jacques Lodin exists at the Taft Museum in Cincinnati, Ohio. The coat of arms in the center of the bowl features several elements. There is a yellow cross on red background, which refers to the Order of Malta and, in particular, to a commander's position within this order. There is a blue shield with a fez and 10 lozenges, identified as the coat of arms of the French family Costin de Pusignan. This distinct combination of the two elements allowed connecting the coat of arms to the individual family member, Alexandre Costin de Pusignan, who held such an office in 1666 and in 1674 to 1677. The type of crown could not be specified, However, its main part is not of original enamel anyway, as you can see here, but in-painted, so it is not clear if it reflects the original design of the crown. The crossing palm leaves are most likely of decorative purpose only. And again, the original enamel here is mainly lost and replaced by in-painted fills. So back to the family coat of arms, it should be mentioned that based on heraldic sources and according to the heraldic color rules, the coat of arms of the family Costin de Pusignan usually has a silver fez in the shield, as shown here, and not a green one, as here on the enamel. Strangely, micro-XRF identified this green layer to be of silver exclusively. No copper is present, which might have allowed explaining the green color with the formation of a green copper corrosion product. But how can the green color be generated, though? In general, silver decorations on Limoges painted enamels appear to be much less common than gold decorations, but can definitely be found. Similarly to gold decorations, it can be assumed that the silver was applied in its pulverized form. Concerning the green color of the fez, silver particles apparently must have diffused too deep into the blue cobalt-colored enamel layer below, causing the development of the green color. According to Whale and his book Colored Glasses, the diffusion of silver atoms into a glass, or in this case an enamel layer respectively, can start around 200 degrees Celsius and is very active as low as 400 degrees Celsius. It is further known that silver can produce a variety of colors in glasses, but depending on many different factors. One of it is, for example, the developed silver particle size in the glass and the incidence of light falling on the glass, as illustrated in this table here. It shows that a green color can be generated by a silver particle size of 25 to 55 nanometers in reflective light, which may relate to the green-silver fez. But the glass composition is a further important factor influencing the color, and the presence of minor components functioning as reducing agents is beneficial for the formation of coloring silver particles. In the case of the blue cobalt-colored enamel layer below the fez, the reducing agent could possibly be arsenic, which is a typical accompanying element of cobalt and which was also identified by XRF. Hence, it appears as if all the distinct parameters for the formation of a green color induced by silver might have been fulfilled, and the fez could be indeed generated by silver that diffused too deep into the enamel layer below. However, the applied non-destructive in situ XRF analysis restrains the study of this color phenomenon, and sampling would be necessary for a more detailed investigation. Finally, I think the color change from silver to green may not have happened during the initial enameling process, but during the restoration process when the foot was soldered to the bowl. The temperature of at least 200 degrees Celsius required for soft soldering and the duration of several minutes necessary for heating up the copper base might have caused sufficient migration of silver atoms into the enamel layer below. Most likely, the heat for the soldering process also caused the extensive firing cracks and disruptions of enamel layers within the coat of arms, which you can see all along here and down here, and the extensive loss of enamel surrounding what I've shown you before. In addition, it seems hard to imagine that the enameler would have delivered the object with these severe firing cracks and a fundamental heraldic failure, both in the very center of the bowl. For the palm leaf, the artist used a first layer of opaque yellow enamel, followed by a layer of translucent green. This is a very distinct buildup found frequently on enamels of the Lodin workshop. as for example with the laurel wreath on their Caesar hats. Many of these plaques exist at the Herzog Anton Ulrich Museum, and here you can see a detail showing again the typical buildup of opaque yellow enamel followed by translucent green. In addition, the opaque yellow enamel in the palm leaf, as well as in the cross, was identified as a Latin antimony yellow with the presence of zinc. This is rare on Limoges painted enamels in general, but typical and specific for works by the Lodins in the 17th century. Below the dark mulberry enamel of the bowl, an initial ground layer of clear enamel is present, which is a common fabrication method for Limoges grisaille works. Concerning the dark mulberry enamel itself, it is surprising that 4 different composition types were identified on the bowl. The first type covers the largest area of the bowl, including the grisaille painting on the front. So it's actually cut out here, but here you can see the one, and down here, and all the surrounding grisaille painting represents type 1, and also the entire underside of the bowl is type 1. Type 2 is located along the fragments of the palm leaves, which is indicated here and over there. Type 3 and 4 are located between the cross and the crown, so in this area. Types 1, 2, and 3 have a similar high lead content, but differ in the amount of manganese, iron, and copper. Type 4 contains significantly less lead than the others. These differences of enamel composition are barely visible to the naked eye, but are partly noticeable under magnification, since a light borderline can be seen separating the enamel types from each other. So the line is here, and I want to point out how the line actually follows the form of the palm leaf. It's quite interesting, and here's the other light line. It was found that the use of infrared reflectography helps to differentiate visually between some of the different compositions of the dark translucent enamel. On the infrared image over here, you can see that type 2 appears darker than type 1. So here again, type 2, this is type 1. And it's caused by the stronger absorption of infrared rays of type 2, which is most likely due to its higher copper content. Also, 2 different types of metal oxide painting were analyzed. Type 1 refers to the metal oxide painting on the grisaille work and contains copper, iron, and manganese, whereas type 2, the metal oxide painting on the coat of arms, lacks iron completely, over here. To summarize, for the bowl, evidence was found for attributing it to the 17th century Lodin workshop. However, the existence of the 4 different types of translucent dark enamel and of 2 different types of metal oxide painting seems to be unusual. The reason for this and for the appearance of a non-continuous enamel application could not be explained and needs further research. Task sharing within the workshop or a late change to the final design of the bowl might be possible explanations. Considering the shape and the general design, most footed enamel bowls are deeper and the undersides richly decorated with grisaille painting, as illustrated, for example, by this piece, with a domed bowl and a decorated underside. However, a very similar shallow bowl from the same workshop and period with an undecorated underside exists at the Herzog Anton Ulrich Museum in Brunswick. It is even not footed at all, but fabricated as a bowl resting directly on its bottom. Several factors, such as the similar shape and design of the Cologne bowl, or the scratches and abrasions found on its underside, which you can see here, suggest that it too may have originally been made without a foot. So now let's take at the foot of the Cologne bowl. The underside of the foot is, like the bowl, also signed in gold. However, the signature is hardly visible in reflected light and just a little better visible in raking light. Heavy scratches on the enamel, which are located almost exclusively over the signature, you can see here, appear as if they were added intentionally to make the surface look old and worn. This slide demonstrates the difference in quality of the golden signatures of the foot and the bowl. You see here a direct comparison of details under increasing magnification. The left column refers to the foot, the right column to the bowl. The gold on the foot has been applied much sparser, and the particles have sunk deeply into the enamel below, which is the reason why the gold decoration on the foot is so barely visible. And of the same poor gold quality is the monogram on the foot, also barely visible in reflected light. For example, here you can see nothing at all, and in raking light you can see it. And it further seems interesting to note that the monogram letters RC do not correspond to the initials of the original owner of the bowl with the first name Alexandre. And no other family member in the 17th or 18th century was identified whose initials would fit the monogram. Contrary to the bowl, no initial ground layer of clear enamel was applied below the dark enamel of the foot. Further, the foot's dark enamel is redder in color than that of the bowl, and I think you can see it very well here if you compare these two enamels. And this was most likely the reason for toning the previous coating with blackish pigments. That's why I show this picture again. So the restorer wanted to hide this difference in color. And although at first glance the glossy enamel of the foot appears to be in a better condition than the heavily scratched enamel of the bowl, the foot enamel shows a dull milky haze in raking light caused by an advanced degree of glass corrosion. Here again a direct comparison of details with increasing magnification. Again, the left column refers to the foot, the right column to the bowl. And you can see the milky haze on the foot at the left, which is due to the formation of corrosion pits visible at higher magnification. The bowl on the right side shows heavy mechanical scratches, but by far a lower degree of chemical glass corrosion. Compared to the bowl, the analysis of the foot's enamel composition showed a similar lead content, but a lower iron, a much lower copper, and a higher potassium content. The examination with infrared reflectography further gave a hint of the homogeneity of the object's dark translucent enamels. Here are photographed details of bowl and foot with their according infrared reflectograms. So this is the section of the bowl's underside near the artist's signature, and the dark enamel corresponds to type 1, which I referred before, and it covers the largest part of the bowl. So inhomogeneities within the enamel are indicated by the unevenness of absorbing dark areas and reflecting light areas, as you can see here, for example. In contrast, the enamel of the foot appears almost perfectly homogeneous with a reflecting light appearance, which is that. The enameling process failed in several areas on the foot's underside, leaving behind an uncovered copper surface and a bumpy enamel structure. Horizontal parallel grooves were observed on the foot's copper base, indicating that a spinning lathe was used for shaping, a process rather typical for 19th century enamel production, while the common copper shaping method for Limoges painted enamels was raising, and no such grooves were found on the bowl's copper base. Finally, the squat shape of the foot is rather unusual, as is the lack of any grisaille decoration on top of the dark enamel. And to summarize, for the foot, many indications were found that it does not belong originally to the bowl, such as the differences in enamel buildup, composition, color, homogeneity, and condition, the difference of gold applications, or the monogram not matching the former owner's initials. In addition, the presence of the spinning grooves on the copper base indicates a 19th century origin. And at last, let's look at the cover plate. The Limoges enamelers often attached circular cover plates within feet in order to hide the mechanical assembly. As with bowls and feet, cover plates may also be replaced with ones from other original 16th and 17th century objects, or be produced only for the purpose of restoration in the 19th century. Micro-XRF of the cover plate's enamel composition could not be carried out since the plate was not accessible to the instrument. And this is actually a frequent problem for analyzing the cover plates of footed bowls. However, the use of infrared reflectography again brought unexpected results by penetrating the dark translucent enamel and revealing a rectangular structure in the center of the cover plate's copper base, which you can see here. With the additional use of X-ray computed tomography, the rectangular structure could also be identified. So this is again the infrared, and this is the X-ray computed tomography image. And you can also see the rectangular shape here. And moving horizontally up within the tomographic cross-section, the rectangular structure starts disappearing, and two other structures to its left and right can be seen here. Applying further a tomographic longitudinal section to the cover plate, it becomes obvious that these structures reflect the shape of two hooks. And to summarize these observations, a strip of sheet metal, most likely copper, has been stitched through two slits cut into the cover plate's copper base, and both ends of this strip are formed into hooks. Structures like this have been observed on cover plates of other Limoges enameled footed bowls and tend to be original 16th and 17th century fabrications. But their exact way of usage or mounting appears to be not clear. In the course of the former 19th century restoration of the Cologne footed bowl, the cover plate was fixed to the foots inside by filling the void between plate and bowl with a filler material, which is here indicated by the yellow color. So the sheet metal hooks do not fulfill any direct assembly or mechanical function now. In conclusion, this detailed study suggests that the object is a pastiche. The bowl has been identified as an original Rodin enamel of the 17th century that was possibly fabricated without any foot at all. The foot instead may have been fabricated and added in the 19th century. In turn, the cover plate inside the foot is probably 16th or 17th century origin, but derives from another object. So this is a list of people I would like to thank in particular, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Birgit, and especially because it's like a criminal investigation.
Yeah.
It's great. It's a good example of restoration. And also, thank you because you're a young professional, and it was your work when your thesis work. And I think it's good to have an old student or new professional, I don't know how to say that, who is presenting his work, and you don't see them very often doing that. And I think it's very interesting and very useful for the profession because they are doing good work there, and even if they're young, then they do good work. Okay, so thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have a question?
Has there been any discussion about separating the two parts?
Yeah, but since you have the soft solder that is connecting the two pieces, I was thinking about it, or if it's possible, but I think it would not have been possible without damaging the object again. So this would have been really invasive, and I didn't want to try it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Did you end up leaving the film
No, we didn't, and this was a decision taken together with the curators and conservators from the Museum of Applied Arts in Cologne, and they even they exhibited the piece after all these investigation and actually put a little mirror behind it so that the visitors can actually see the solder joint, and so they explained it in a label, so they wanted to leave it like this.